Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Councillor Moran, Acting Mayor for this evening's meeting. I'd like to respectfully acknowledge that the lands on which this meeting is being conducted is the unceded territory of the Comox First Nation, the traditional keepers of this land. I wanted to say that July 8th was the unveiling of the Guardian pole by Carver Everson at the Courtenay Air Park. And we're so grateful for the collaboration on this Guardian pole project between Comox First Nation and the City of Courtenay. We look forward to continued strengthening of our relationship with Comox First Nation and finding meaningful ways to support our shared goals, including services, culture, and economic development. Thank you to everyone involved with making this project happen, in particular Carver Everson and Comox First Nation, as well as all of the city staff and contractors who have supported the project, and Heritage BC and the province of BC through the Time Immemorial Grant Program for providing financial support for this project. And I know many of us were in attendance at this event, and there were also many hereditary chiefs in attendance representing other First Nations who were on this land as well over history. I have another statement to make today. This one is unfortunate. So it's regarding an incident that happened outside of the Music Fest event over the weekend. I'd like to say on behalf of myself, Mayor, who is currently away, and Council, that our thoughts and hearts are with the 3 victims of a tragic accident on Headquarters Road outside the Music Fest venue on Saturday night, where a driver in an uninsured vehicle struck 1 pedestrian and 2 cyclists. One of these cyclists received more serious injuries and, instead of performing as scheduled at Music Fest this weekend, had to be airlifted to Victoria for treatment. Community support for the victim and family, who are also members of our local agricultural community, has been overwhelming, with an impromptu fundraiser quickly organized at Music Fest to help during this difficult time. Our local farming community is also looking for volunteers to help with crop maintenance and harvest, work that the victim and their family are now sadly unable to do themselves. If you would like to help, please contact the Comox Valley Farmers Market. Email at, it begins info@cvfm.ca, or you can talk to Twyla Skinner, the coordinator at the farmers market, in person as well. The RCMP responded immediately, arresting a driver and serving them with several violations, including impaired driving. We are grateful for the RCMP's quick response and action on this incident, which is still under investigation, as well as grateful to first responders. Investigators are asking anyone who witnessed the crash or has dash cam video of the incident to contact the Comox Valley RCMP at 250-338-1321. The City of Courtenay works closely with event organizers and emergency services on traffic planning for events like this, and it is heartbreaking that this incident occurred despite safety precautions in place. This is the first incident on record of an attendee being injured while leaving the event. Further review of this incident will continue to determine if additional safety precautions are needed. To the victims, their families and friends, and anyone else impacted by this incident, please know that your community is behind you and surrounding you with our love and support. Okay, so we'll go to the first item on the agenda, which is introduction of late items. And we do have a late item today, and that is a notice of motion for the July 25th meeting. And if there are no exceptions, we'll accept that notice of motion. And that's regarding the staff report for the impact of discontinuation of solid waste collection services. And that will be discussed at the July 25th meeting. Okay, moving on to adoption of minutes. Councillor Hamilton and Councillor McCollum. And any additions or discussion on the minutes? Seeing none. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, moving on to staff reports. First up, we have Recreation, Culture and Community Services, Leisure for Everyone Accessibility Program, LEAP Pilot Program Expansion. And I'll turn it over to staff to discuss this report. Thank you. Why she's sorry, just getting the numbers straight here. There we go.
Thank you very much. We have Kathy Collins with us, who's the Manager of Recreation Programming and Recreation, and she'll be also providing a presentation for Council's benefit.
So through the CAO to Mayor and Council, thanks for having me here today to present on the proposed expansion of the Regional Pilot Leisure for Everyone Accessibility Program, also known as LEAP, to include those ages 19 and over. The City of Courtenay currently provides the Recreation Access Program to all City of Courtenay residents in need of financial assistance to gain access to recreation services. The recreation access benefits include 52 free drop-ins to Courtenay recreation programs and annual discounts up to specific dollar amounts depending on an age. So for example, for adults, this would be 50% off of programs up to an annual value of $350. For youth, it's 75% off programs up to a value of $400 annually. And for children, it's 75% off programs up to a value of $450 annually. Courtenay Recreation has also partnered with the CVRD, the Town of Comox, and the Village of Cumberland to offer an intermunicipal program, which is a pilot for youth called LEAP. The LEAP program stands for Leisure for Everyone Accessibility Program and offers 52 free drop-ins to each municipal recreation facility in the Comox Valley. LEAP was approved by Council in November of 2021 as a one-year pilot and was implemented January 1st of 2022. Currently, eligibility requirements for LEAP is that the applicant must be a youth identified as 18 and under, living within Statistics Canada's low income measurement tool thresholds and living anywhere within the Comox Valley. To date, Courtenay's processed a total of 69 youth LEAP applicants, a total redemption rate of only about 5.2% out of total potential applicants in the Valley. During this phase, staff have also worked with local community agencies to promote awareness of the programs, as well as to help identify ways of making the application process easier, as well as to facilitate the application process. The application process for the Recreation Access Financial Assistance Program was improved by having the ability to apply for all municipal financial assistance programs on one application form. So this would include LEAP. And also the application form has to be filled out only once and is then sent to the other applicable municipalities on behalf of the participant. This then limits the applicant's need for transportation between centers. Next slide, please. So the proposed changes for this next phase of the LEAP pilot includes an extension of the LEAP pilot for one more year into 2023 to include those ages 19 and over. During this phase, ongoing adjustments and improvements to the application process and administrative processes between the municipalities would continue with the goal of further identifying and removing any barriers to the application process. The proposed extension would allow for ongoing collaboration with our municipal partners and continued monitoring and evaluation of the impacts of the proposed changes. If approved, the expansion of the LEAP pilot would start January 2023, making LEAP available to all Comox Valley residents, regardless of age and their place of residency within the Comox Valley. So some statistics here are, according to Statistics Canada, there's a total of 9,140 adults who would be eligible to apply for the LEAP program. And out of this, 4,075 reside within the City of Courtenay limits. So therefore, what it means is by approving the LEAP pilot extension to adults means that an additional 5,065 residents living outside of the City of Courtenay limits would have the opportunity to apply for and receive 52 free drop-ins to Courtenay recreation programs. It is also noted that to date, only 6.7% of potential Courtenay Recreation Access Program eligible adults have applied for and received the Recreation Access Program. The addition of the free drop-ins offered to the LEAP punch card holders would have no direct cost impacts as participants are dropping into pre-existing programs and are not displacing paying users. So for example, the adult participants would have the option to drop into the wellness center or fitness class. So based on the LEAP and recreation access redemption rates, staff are confident that the LEAP eligible adult applicants from other municipalities will be able to be maintained within our current service levels, while also improving access to recreation programs through reducing the financial barriers to participation. To ensure the program expansion remains sustainable, another one-year pilot from January 1st, 2023 to December 31st, 2023 is being recommended. Staff would report back to Council in the fall of 2023 with usage information and with further recommendations at that time. Thank you for your time, and I'm open to receive questions.
Great, thank you so much for the report. Any questions, comments? Councillor McCollum, or sorry, Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
Sounds good. Thanks very much, Mayor. I'm wholeheartedly in favor of this, and I just had a question about the uptake in various communities, and I was quite impressed to see that it seems both the Comox TRIP program and the CVRD Play program seem to have remarkably high rates of uptake among youth, not so high among adults. And I was just wondering if there's anything we can learn from either of those programs in terms of their ability to draw people in and take advantage of the opportunity there. I think their Comox has a 31% uptake rate on the youth program and the RD 23%. So anyway, just any thoughts on how we could help more people benefit from this?
Yes, thank you for the question. What we determined through our process here was that the way the applications were processed were different between the municipalities. So I believe some of the numbers, although it looks as though that they're quite high in our partnered municipalities, they would count any application, whether it's somebody who'd actively pursued application in Comox as somebody who's actively receiving LEAP, whereas we would only count those who've actually followed through with coming to receive their LEAP punch card. So it's a bit of a different way of how the applications were processed, but certainly acknowledge that more promotion can be done to get more uptake on our LEAP programs.
Great, thank you. And Councillor McCollum.
Thanks, Acting Mayor, and thanks for the presentation. It's great to see this program being expanded and the success of the pilot program from last year. My question was along similar lines to Councillor Cole-Hamilton and just the uptake rates that we saw, and whether or not we're actively working with any other community groups that are working with at-risk youth or the school district, just to ensure that families that qualify for this benefit are aware and are getting that information from perhaps different communication channels than our city marketing.
Yes, thank you. Through CO to Mayor and Council, we have connected with some community agencies such as the Comox Valley Family Services, recently with the Immigration Society. However, we do acknowledge that more and more connections can be made, and that would be part of this next phase, would to further expand those networks. It's always interesting too to hear feedback from them about what some of the barriers are to the application process. So that is something we would be actively working on as well.
Great, thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Hillian.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks to staff for the report. I think this is a good move going forward, and I'd like to move the recommendation if that's appropriate, Mayor. I'll move that based on the July 11th, 2022 staff report, Leisure for Everyone Accessibility Program, pilot program expansion to include 19 years and over. Council approve option 1 and direct staff to implement this pilot program in partnership with the town of Comox, Village of Cumberland, and Comox Valley Regional District for 2023 and report back on pilot results and future recommendations.
Thank you, Hillian and Frisch. Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, on to the next report. This is the adoption of CVRD bylaw number 719, Regional Park Service. And I'll turn it over to staff. Thank you. If there's, we can go ahead if someone.
Sorry, Dave.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, thanks, Acting Mayor. I'll move that the City of Courtenay consent to adopt the Regional Parks and Trails Service Establishment Bylaw number 719, 2022, as proposed by the Comox Valley Regional District under Section 346 of the Local Government Act.
Frisch and McCollum. Any discussion or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Didn't appear that way, unless I missed somebody. We did have quite a discussion on it before, I believe, but anyone opposed? Thank you. And that's carried. Thanks. I'm not trying to run, a tighter ship than Mayor Wells, but I do have Councillor Hillian who will keep me in check. So, Mayor Wells actually already said to me that he thought I would run a tighter ship. So I'll see if I can rise to that challenge. Okay, the next report is from CAO and Corporate Services, and this is 685 Cliff Avenue, proposed amendment and renewal consideration. And we have, I don't have these memorized like I do with Regional District. Councillor Frisch, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Acting Mayor. I'll move that council direct staff to provide public notice to adjacent property owners. I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong page.
Oh, this is
I'm on 164.
4.2.1.
136, my apologies. I'll move that council approve a 1-year lease extension between the City of Courtenay and the Comox Valley Transition Society for the continued use of the property located at 685 Cliff Avenue. And the PID number is listed there as authorized in accordance with section 2.1 subsection E of the November 1st, 2021 lease agreement, and that council approve an amendment to the November 1st, 2021 lease agreement to extend the lease area to include the entire property located at 685 Cliff Avenue with the following additional amendments. So A is maintenance and cleaning responsibilities to be extended to the full frontage and rear of the building. B, language regarding tenant-led initiated capital improvements, specify that any improvements made by the tenant do not constitute a partnership or other form of relationship other than landlord and tenant, and that any tenant or landlord capital investment in the property does not create an obligation or expectation of future lease renewals. And C, identify September 1st, 2022 or another date as approved by the CAO as the occupancy date for the expanded lease area. And that council waive the monthly rental costs during the construction period to a maximum of 1 month, which is $1,000. And D, to increase the rental rate inclusive of the entire building located at 685 Cliff Avenue from $1,000 a month to $2,000 per month. And the council approves the tenant proposed renovations, capital improvements subject to the tenant achieving all necessary permits and approvals. And that staff provide public notice to satisfy the statutory advertising requirements for the provision of assistance and disposition of city land per section 24 of the community charter.
Great. Councillor Cole-Hamilton seconded. And do we have any discussion on that recommendation? Okay, we'll hear from staff first. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to council. So typically this one-year lease renewal would come up at the end of October based on the original lease term. And the reason why we're advancing both the lease renewal as well as is because the expansion request has come in through the CVTS. And it's essentially to take over the other half of the building to increase their capacity under the current lease terms and conditions. And then really the additional items within the amendment or the recommended amendment are just extensions of the current terms and conditions, with the one new item really being that we're not creating a relationship we didn't intend to create in the first place, because part of what the report is explaining is that they intend to make some capital investment in the property, whereas the city, based on our capital asset management plans, does not plan or intend to invest in the property in the future, unless otherwise directed through council or through budget process. They have achieved funding through the Strengthening Community Services Grant to expand the day center services. So that's the 6-day-a-week operations for the Connect Community Access Hub. As of today, they have not achieved funding to run an overnight shelter. In the event that should council approve this and they complete the capital works that have been proposed and have met all of the code requirements to the satisfaction of the chief building inspector, they would qualify or would be allowed under the current zoning and the current lease to operate a shelter. That said, that is not the city's intent at this time to create a permanent shelter in this location. This is really a temporary location while the city, as well as mayor and council, work to seek permanent funding for a purpose-built shelter and or other similar services. So this is not a permanent solution. The building itself will not be permanent by the nature of the building. So that's just to clarify that point. And essentially the lease rate is double the size. So lease provided would be double the lease rent. And then that does represent a $48,000 per annum contribution, in-kind contribution on behalf of the city. And I'm happy to answer any questions should you have any.
Councillor Hillian, I did see you. There you go.
Thanks, Acting Mayor, and thanks to staff for the report. So in general, I think we're doing the right thing here. We're continuing to support our local agencies in providing these important outreach services, which are not being provided by the province, who, in my view, hold the primary responsibility. But we're also not relenting in our push for a permanent solution to provide these services in potentially a different location. This is a city-owned building, which may in fact have other uses that are important to the city over time to be determined. But while we're not using it for other purposes, it makes total sense that we make it available to provide these important services for vulnerable citizens. So I really appreciate the work that staff are doing to collaborate with the agencies involved and make sure these services are in place, and I support this moving forward. I do have one other question, though, related to the activities around the center, and one of the amendments in the lease is, I believe, expanded cleanup. I think there's an advisory process that is in place, and I'm just wondering if staff could give us some indication of how those activities are progressing. I think that we're seeing fewer people around the center now, perhaps with the warmer weather. Of course, that may coincide with challenges with campsite activity in other parts of the community. We've just had a rather concerning letter today about debris in one of the campsite areas down behind the Walmart and such. So I'm just wondering if staff could give us a bit of an assessment of where things stand with the use of the property and the related activities. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. So you're correct. When we transitioned from the licensed occupation to the lease agreement in November of last year, based on the feedback and the experience we'd had with the service being provided in that location previously, there were additional requirements under the lease agreement that included perimeter cleanup. So there is a reporting requirement for that, to conduct cleanup twice a day or twice during the shift, once in the morning and once in the evening. It extends to the front of the building, to the edge of the sidewalk, all the way down the first row of parking in the city-owned parking lot, as well as 2 meters into the back alleyway. In addition to the requirements on CVTS through the lease agreement, There is also funding through the Strengthening Communities Grant that will see an additional street cleaning outreach crew, which is comprised of individuals with lived experience who will be visiting multiple locations in the downtown core, including the parking lots around City Hall, the Herbaloo, and the washroom facilities at the Sid Williams. We do have the ability to kind of shift folks, although they are walking, not driving, so it needs to be someplace accessible. The other concerns regarding security or potential interactions or conflicts between local business employees or business owners themselves have really been mitigated by the addition of provided security. So security works for a 4-hour shift in the morning when folks are arriving at work. And it's also there for 4 hours in the evening around the typical time frame when people are leaving to go to their cars after work. Since then, the number of complaints have dropped significantly. We're receiving very good positive feedback from the DCVIA, and the Community Advisory Committee terms of reference are in draft form, and we're looking to get that up and running with CBTS in the very, very near future. So far, so good.
Thanks very much for that. And important to note that the money for the additional rent is coming not from the local agencies involved, but from the Strengthening Communities Grant. And I'm wondering if you could just let us know whether we've been successful in extending the time frame for that grant's operation, and if we know at what point that funding expires.
So the application for the extension has been fully submitted. I did have a couple follow-up questions from the funder regarding some of the budget details, which have been provided to them. I reached out to the BCM today, and we expect a response by the end of the week, but all indications are that they've been very happy with the changes that have been made. We've also entered into service agreements with 3 providers, and the next update to council will identify those providers for things like rural outreach, meal programming, as well as that additional community outreach group and street cleaning group. So that'll be in the next update that will come at the end of August to council, as well as the partner municipalities.
Thanks very much.
Councillor Theos, did you reconsider you had your light on earlier?
My question was actually answered.
Excellent. Okay, thank you so much. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor of the recommendation or the bylaw? And any opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Thank you. Okay, we're on to development services. This is development variance permit number 2205-1526 Trumpeter Crescent. And Councillor Coe-Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks, Acting Mayor. I was just going to move the recommendation. So I'll move that council direct staff to provide public notice to adjacent property owners and occupants and request feedback regarding development variance permit number 2205, and the development variance permit number 2205 be brought forward at the July 25th council meeting for consideration by council.
Thank you. Councillor Frisch seconded. Any questions or comments? Do we want staff to speak to this at all? I'm used to staff being able to turn their mic on. Thank you.
So we do have Tetsuki here, Aseta here, the Manager of Development Planning, to answer any questions you may have. This DVP, though, however, is fairly straightforward with lots of support from the neighboring homes. So if you have questions, they can be directed to staff.
Great, thank you. Okay. Councillor McCollum.
Thanks. Yeah, I just had a question. I mean, it's not a significant concern, as all the neighbors in the area seem to not take any issue with the location of this garage, but I understand why the building structure needs to be set closer to the side property line in order to line up with the driveway or with the side yard, but why does it need to be located so close to the rear fence? How does that impact how the structure can be used?
There you go. Thank you.
Thanks for the question. Yes, so due to the location of the driveway and the principal building, the property owner wished to park their boat. So if there's a less curb, it's easier for maneuvering to the boat in rear side of the property. So that this variance request to create that more straight line for the parking for the relatively large object to the rear side of the lot. So we did ask applicants to ask immediate neighbors and property neighbors distant property owners. There's no significant objections with respect to the request. However, through this process, the staff at this time, staff will send out a notice to the immediate neighbors and to find out if further consideration or concerns with respect to this application. So we will present the outcome at the next council meeting on July 25th.
Just to clarify, because I'm not sure I understood from your answer, but I fully understand that with the side setback, but why does the building structure need to be located further toward the back of the property in order to use or park a boat inside it? I couldn't discern that from the letter from the applicant, so I thought maybe staff would have discussed that.
Rick McClure here. May I answer that?
Well, that's
Yeah, I'm the applicant. May I answer the question?
Sure, go ahead. Thank you.
Yes, there is some maneuvering that has to happen, and the further I can have it back, the more space it gives me between the house and the garage to maneuver over a little bit. Had I been able to go with the 2.5 feet that I had initially asked for instead of the 3 feet, I would have been able to line up okay. But with it moving behind the house a little bit, I do need the extra space toward the back.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for that clarification. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. I don't have any concerns about this. This is a homeowner who wants to build a garage and has taken the responsible course of action of contacting all the neighbors, and none of whom object. But I did just want to clarify two things. First of all, if staff could let us know, is this the type of application that under the new procedural rules that we're looking at would be dealt with at the staff level and wouldn't actually need to come to council?
Go ahead, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hilling, for the question. Sorry, as per the report that came to council not so long ago, it was referred back to staff to create the criteria and the policy. As the policy has not come back forward to council for consideration, really staff will be making recommendations based on what we perceive to be minor variances. So that is within the limits of the legislation. You know, an item that has full support that is consistent with the intent of the original zoning would have a good likelihood, but until the actual policy comes back for council consideration, it's not known at this point what would be considered a minor variance and delegated to staff.
Fair enough, thanks. The other point I wanted to make was that I think in general, it's good practice for us to state what the actual item of business is that we're dealing with, just so that the many people tuning in to watch us on television here actually know what we're talking about. And so I would appreciate if you know, even when we have a short item that everybody's in agreement with, that we hear briefly from staff regarding what the nature of the item is. And to me, that's a more open process for the people who are tuning in who may not have the full agenda at their disposal. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. We did have some chat about that earlier, the best way to proceed with that. Okay. Seeing no more lights on, all in favor of the recommendation? Anyone opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Thanks so much. The next item is Age-Friendly Communities Program Grant Application Stream 2, and I'll, as requested, turn it over to staff first. Thank you.
So we have Tatsuyuki Seda here, who will also speak to this application.
And go ahead, thank you.
Oh, thank you to acting CAO, to acting mayor and the city council. Thanks for the opportunity for me to present 2022 Age-Friendly Communities Program Grant Application, Stream 2. Back in 2020, in January, we did apply, city staff applied for Stream 1, which is more research-based initiation and grant opportunity. We were successful grant recipient, and we did conduct community engagement alongside with the OCP consultation, which was very, very successful. We were able to engage with community groups such as Community Health Network and Evergreen Club, and individuals representing senior community in this in Courtenay. And we were able to produce a report which is available on the city's website, identifying some of the issues the residents feel that need to be improved for improvement. So this second Stream 2 application is to do the actual audit, accessibility audit for further improvement. And as part of the application requirement, the Ministry of Health through UBCM administration, they did ask staff to provide city council resolution. So that this is why we were bringing this staff report forward and to ask for the council endorsement for staff application. I'm happy to answer any question.
Okay, Councillor Hillian. So I'm having to check the numbers here. Go ahead, thank you.
Thank you, Acting Mayor, and thanks to staff. Another good initiative, it seems. But I was a little bit unclear about what we actually meant by accessibility. I noted that the accessibility committee in the community wasn't noted among the organizations consulted with, although perhaps they were incorporated through the health network. I'm not sure. But what do we actually mean by accessibility? Are we talking about access for people who have mobility concerns? It mentioned seniors and youth, but it seemed to be lacking in specifics.
Thank you to CEO to Mayor Council. Thanks for the questions. Yes, so that's accessibility is exactly what you just mentioned. It's accessibility for handicap and senior people, not only senior people, but parents with stroller, for example, or young person who is injured, have difficulty with mobility to access public facility, including public space outside, such as park, for example, between parking area to actual facility. There's so many small things we are not aware, even little ramp or difference in the level. Those things, some building code requires, but there's so many things can go above beyond just the regulation. So we can, through this grant opportunity, we like to identify some of the opportunity we can make a difference, go above beyond building code or some other regulations.
Yeah, thanks for that. And hopefully the accessibility committee will be part of this in terms of some sort of consultation, because they regularly bring things to our attention along these lines. For example, the challenges for people with mobility issues when we have a snow event and, the bus stops tend not to get cleared till perhaps later on in the process. I think the example you raised of the small curbs is a very good one. We don't even think about it if we don't have mobility challenges. But there's one other issue that I'd like to be considered as part of this. We actually have a council resolution from a few years back that came at the request of seniors in the community for additional benches to be available on city streets for when people are out for a walk, so that they can have a rest and make it easier for them to walk around the city. And I don't know that we've actually done anything on that yet. I haven't seen any inventory of our benches. So that's maybe something else that could be incorporated as part of this type of an audit. Thanks very much.
Great, thank you. And Councillor Theos.
Thanks, Acting Mayor. Appreciate it. When I'm looking at stream one, the stream one is the assessment and the development of the action plan. So it seems like communication and strategic planning to what our needs are went into stream one, and no actual dollars went into completion of any projects. Now I'm looking at stream two, and the first one was for $25,000. And I'm looking at stream two, and I'm thinking to myself, well, we're going to hire a consultant if I was reading it right, and the consultant is going to administer the project, and he's going to establish communications between groups, and then it would appear that there would be the next level of actually putting funds into completing a project. I'm just wondering if I'm reading that right, because I'm thinking to myself, well, what is the cost of the consultant? And my concerns are, if we have consultation upon consultation and administration, where are the monies that are actually going into seeing that the projects come to fruition?
Ms. O'Connell would like to respond. Thanks.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Theos. You're correct. The first phase was more the planning component of it. So looking at accessibility and incorporating it into the OCP. The second phase is really auditing our existing facilities and parks and working with all of those interested community parties to determine where the priorities would be and the items that, if there were changes made, would make the most significant difference of their accessibility when it comes to families, people with mobility issues, in regards to accessing recreation within and other buildings, city buildings in general within the city. In the financial implications, it does note that through the audit itself and based on the recommendations, that will essentially result in like a prioritization list. So these would be the recommendations coming out of it. And then as far as how the capital works would actually come to fruition, it would be brought forward through the annual budgeting process. And then council would have the option as to whether or not they wanted to fund the capital works. At the same time, staff are always being very, very diligent in looking for opportunities for grants. And when it comes to things like improving accessibility, it really is an area that is a bit, the money is more likely to be found at that point. At the same time, as you've seen within their report, we also have other partners in the community who are conducting the same audits. So there may be some opportunities at cost saving measures once we get through the audit where we can do work that's complementary to that of another organization and get a greater benefit for the investment. So council will have the opportunity every year to look at it through budget. We'll have the recommendations based on a priority order from individuals who are living their lives with accessibility challenges, and essentially be part of your decisions on an annual basis moving forward.
Great, thank you. And Councillor McCollum.
I was just going to remove the recommendation if we're
Great.
ready. I'll move that council authorize the application for grant funding through the 2022 Ministry of Health's Age Friendly Communities Program to conduct an accessibility audit of public open spaces and multimodal transportation networks within Courtenay OCP growth centers.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Frisch for seconding. And we have Councillor Theos.
Okay, thank you very much. Just further to that, if I may, please. It's just because there's a number of people that always are concerned about study after study, and then seeing the monies going to the place where they'd want to be. So if I give an example, for instance, let's say, because we're talking youth and seniors, but let's just say there was a decision that the money would go into the Philbrook Center, for instance, and some renovations of some capacity or some upgrades. If we made a decision on that, and we still applied for the Stream 2 project funding, would we receive that $15,000 and maybe not have to give it to, not have to hire a consultant? Would we be able to directly put that into funding a project? Or is this money contingent on the fact that we have to hire a consultant that will see this project move forward, whatever it is in the end?
Thank you very much, Councillor Theos. The application has been submitted. So at this point, we're really looking for the endorsement resolution from council in order to move forward. So the application timeline has closed at this point. Specifically, the funding requested was for the audit. The reason why the consultant is being recommended to hire is from a capacity perspective. So there's a lot of community interest engagement that needs to take place in coordination, as well as, the hosting of those meetings, having those priority discussions, doing the on-site audits, things like that. So it's really just, it's easier for our staff and within our staff's capacity to oversee and get feedback from the consultant than it would be to run the entire process itself. So that's where the suggestion or the recommendation is to hire the consultant to run the audit, and then staff would oversee that. It's just from a capacity perspective as well as from an expertise. So in hiring a consultant, we can actually hire someone with a lot more specialized and technical expertise in the area of accessibility, whereas our staff are very, very educated and do a wonderful job. Finding someone who has more specialized expertise is always a benefit.
Thank you,
Great, thank you. Yeah, if there's nobody else, I just wanted to make a couple comments. Thanks for clarifying that this funding is actually for that audit, which would be enabling reaching out to different groups and individuals. And I appreciated Councillor Hillian's point about the accessibility committee. I also think there's some folks that we don't always reach, and that's, as Councillor Theos mentioned, youth. So perhaps finding a way to engage with the school district. There's a lot of younger people who have mobility challenges as well, and it would be great to get their input. So I think just as much feedback as we can get on this audit would be great. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, we're moving on to Public Works, and the first item is Lake Trail Road multi-use path, and we'll turn it over to staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Through you, we have Kyle Shaw, Director of Public Works Services, to introduce this report and answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Through the acting CAO to the acting mayor and council, I'm pleased to present staff report, Lake Trail Road multi-use path. The purpose of this report is to present council with refined options for the multi-use path on Lake Trail Road between Arden Elementary and Lake Trail Community Schools. Council recall back in November of 2021, council directed staff to design an active transportation facility that meets the BC Active Transportation grant requirements and apply for funding through the 2022 intake. There are two refined design options for council's consideration. And really, the bulk of the decision points revolve around the outcome of the tree inventory assessment, or a TIA. A fulsome tree inventory assessment was completed over the corridor with a total of 168 trees being assessed for health and potential impacts relative to the construction of an MUP, or multi-use path. This included determining removal and retention requirements based on the proposed location and construction methodology. Under a 3-meter wide MUP scenario, the report indicates that 65 trees would need to be removed and a further 37 would need to be temporarily retained. And that the drainage ditch that's parallel to Lake Trail Road on the north side would have to become fully enclosed along the majority of the corridor or the trail alignment. The estimated and updated cost to build a 3-meter wide paved MUP is approximately $1.73 million. And under the 2-meter wide MUP scenario, the total tree retention amount is increased only slightly by about 5 to 10%. However, the majority of the open ditch remains intact. The community field to the local area plan is retained. The open ditches are retained. In addition, it is recommended that the road surface be widened to accommodate a 1.5 painted buffered bike lane that currently exists within that road network cross section in front of Lake Trail Schools. That would be extended out to the continuation of the jurisdictional boundary. And the cost to construct a 2-meter wide gravel pathway and to widen the existing shoulder is approximately $917,000. So staff now are seeking council's resolution and direction to proceed with the recommended 2-meter wide MUP. With that, I'd be happy to take any questions council may have.
Okay, Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Acting Mayor, and thanks for the report. Yeah, I think the reasoning is sound, and I'm actually happy to move the recommendation if you'll accept it at this time, Acting Mayor.
Sure, thank you.
Sure, I'll move that council approve option 1 and direct staff to submit an application for grant funding for the Lake Trail multi-use path through the Active Transportation Grant Program for the 2-meter wide gravel pathway, and that council support the project and commit any associated ineligible costs or potential cost overruns, and that council direct staff to send correspondence to the CVRD electoral areas requesting consideration of financial contribution to the project through their 2023 financial planning process.
Councillor Coe-Hamilton, second, and Councillor McCollum.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm supportive of the recommendation. I think it makes sense given the area and yeah, its proximity to rural roads. I think that 2 meters would probably service the community adequately. My question was just if you could give or expand, it's somewhere in the report, but I'm just not finding it as I'm scanning, but there was mention that our application to the grant program may be hindered by opting for the 2-meter width over the 3. And I'm just wondering if you have anything to add other than it's not optimal.
Yeah, thank you for that question through the acting CAO. It's a great point, and we wanted to be transparent in that process through the reporting back to council that it is not ideal in terms of clicking the boxes or checking the boxes for the application process, as a paved 3-meter wide bidirectional path would see the most advantageous review. However, staff have been in contact with the grant reviewers, and they are now being requested through the revision of their applications to look outside the box. And I think staff have an opportunity through the application process to provide justification for just what's been proposed, stepping away from what would be idealistic in terms of checking all the boxes and looking to a continuation of improving not only the corridor for multimodal, but also in recognition of the local area plan and the environment in terms of net impact if we were to go to a paved surface. I think, although it would not, again, just to recap, check the boxes, I think there's a great opportunity for us to explain why we've chosen the direction that we have.
That's reassuring. Thanks for expanding on that. I just have one other question too, if I can have a subsequent. Just wondering if you could give some additional information on just the in the financial implications section of the report, there's consideration of requesting some cost sharing with the CVRD. Am I understanding that? And I'm curious as to which part of the roadway that relates to. I'm not completely clear on where Courtenay's responsibility stops and starts, or if there's any additional information you could provide on that piece.
Yeah, thank you for that. So the road corridor is the city's ownership in entirety through the SRW, through from effectively between the two schools, from Lake Trail all the way out to Arden Elementary School. However, the fronting properties that are adjacent from Arden Road out to, the vast majority of them, I should say, out to Arden Elementary School are within Area C. And so there's a net benefit both on the regional district side as well as the city. But also the CVRD has yet to define exactly what the multimodal transportation corridor will look like as it expands beyond. And so there's an opportunity now for synergy and collaborative consideration to what will be something that will be carried on within and outside the city's jurisdictional boundary.
Great, thanks for expanding on that.
Great, thank you. Councillor Hillian.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks to staff. This is kind of an interesting contradiction that this report highlights, because we live in a city in which has many roads that are exceptionally wide, such that when we narrow them to provide additional pedestrian and cycling infrastructure, people get kind of panicky. And then we have regional roads that are exceptionally narrow. So when we try to improve the infrastructure there, we end up with all sorts of complications related to trees and open ditches and such. I appreciate the challenges involved, and I think in part that explains why it's taken us over 4 years from March of 2018, when the Arden ambassadors first approached us to ask for improved pedestrian infrastructure on this road. And with regards to that, I'm just wondering if staff might consider sharing the information about the progress of the project and the challenges involved, particularly related to trees and such, with the school district, so that they might pass that on to their students who are probably in grade 10 or 11 now. Because I think it's really helpful for them to see that their efforts, even though it's taken some time, have yielded something positive, but also to understand what's involved in the process, and perhaps why we can't always do things as quickly as our citizens might like. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Hillian. And Mr. Shaw, is that something that you don't need further direction on? Okay, super. And we'll go to Councillor Coe-Hamilton. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Acting Mayor. I was going to add briefly on to what Councillor Hillian said, is a few of us were invited by the Arden Green team to go and walk this area with them about 2 months ago now. And many of the things that are in this report are things we were discussing with them, and I'm sure they'd appreciate. It's a community-based collaboration that probably all those members would appreciate hearing the staff report and having that information passed on to them. So perhaps as when you write to SD 71, you could indicate that would be a great way of sharing information. I also had I had 2 questions. One is that this resolution says that we commit to any associated ineligible costs or potential cost overruns. And I wanted to ask what, if we had a sense of what those might be. And kind of related to that is a second question. The grant will cover up to 50% of eligible project costs. And I just wanted to inquire as to whether the full 917,000 falls within that category of eligible project costs, such that they would pay 50% of that if we were successful in obtaining the grant.
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you for that. So ineligible costs would be design, the design work, and really the consultation that's effectively transpired until the time of application. The grant would cover up to 50%, and given our community size, it's 50%. If you're a larger or smaller community, that contribution differs. It's up to a total project cost of $1 million. So this entirety of both the construction and the civil administration would be inclusive of that opportunity, and 50% would be cost recovered through this grant application if the city was to be successful.
So thank you. So I understand from that that 50% of the 917,000 would be eligible for that grant. Okay, great. That's good to hear. Thanks, Kyle.
Okay, seeing no further discussion, I just like the part in the recommendation that connecting with the RD, because we do have these areas that kind of border, and these where it's good to work together, because we do get a lot of comments about these more rural feeling roads and safety on, we get comments about safety on all of our roads for pedestrians, but certainly we have those situations where it's good to work together. Okay, seeing no more lights on. All those in favor of the recommendation? And no one's opposed, so that's carried. Thank you. Okay, we're on external reports and correspondence, and we have bylaw number 725, Comox Valley Economic Development Service Conversion bylaw number 345, 2016 amendment number 3. And we have we have Ms. O'Connell. Thank you.
Thank you, Acting Mayor, through you. So the city has received a request from the regional district to endorse bylaw number 345. The intent of the bylaw is to further implement the outcomes of the service review conducted in 2021 and 2022 by including the Village of Cumberland as a participant in the Comox Valley Tourism Service. Staff have provided a draft resolution should council wish to consider support of this bylaw.
Great, thank you. And Councillor McCollum.
Yeah, I was just going to move the recommendation if that's okay.
Sure.
I'll move that the City of Courtenay consent to the adoption of the Comox Valley Regional District bylaw number 725, being Comox Valley Economic Development Service Conversion bylaw number 345, 2016, amendment number 3 under section 346 of the Local Government Act.
Second.
Councillor Hilligan, second. Thank you. Any questions or comments?
I'll make a comment.
Go ahead.
Seeing as my mic's still on, just that it's great to see Cumberland rejoining our tourism service and collaborating as a region on this initiative. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Okay, no more lights. All those in favor of the recommendation? Anyone opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, we have our wonderful fire chief who's been waiting patiently for us for the next item. So we have the Courtenay Fire Department semi-annual activity report briefing note. And we'll turn it over to our chief, Mr. McDonald. Thank you.
Thank you very much, through the acting CAO to the acting mayor and council. The fire department responded to 429 incidents between January 1st and June 30th of this year, which is 2 more than we responded to during the same period in 2021. Many of the responses made by our crews have been to alarms activated calls, motor vehicle incidents, and structure related incidents so far this year. In addition to the emergency responses, our volunteer members have invested over 749 hours on training subjects, including building familiarization, water supply, forcible entry, rope rescue systems, and auto extrication. Our members also have participated in joint rural firefighting training with the Oyster River Fire Rescue and newly formed Merville Fire Department, as well as hosted some emergency vehicle driver training that members from Cumberland Fire Rescue, Comox Fire Rescue, Oyster River Fire Rescue, and the Merville Fire Department all attended up at our East Courtenay training ground. Something that has been very exciting this year is our fire inspection and prevention activities have been restored to pre-pandemic levels, allowing us to once again host fire station tours, provide fire safety training to the business community, and to deliver the fire safety house programming to elementary schools in both the city and our protection area. I can honestly say that our daytime staff have all commented on how good it feels to be once again delivering these programs and how much fun the children have been having coming through the fire hall again. So it's been really nice to kind of get back to, stuff that we were doing prior to 2020. And with that, just this brief update, I'm open for questions from council.
Great, thank you so much. Do we have any questions? Okay, Councillor Hillian, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just wondering, Chief, if you can give us an update on how we're doing this summer. It seems that it's obviously not as warm as last year. We don't have the forest fire situation that we dealt with in the past. And I'm just wondering how that's playing out locally and what your expectations are around members potentially going to other parts of the province to help out if that situation develops.
Thank you very much for the question. So far, everything has been pretty slow when it comes to the forests drying out. As everybody's aware, we haven't had the most ideal summer. I do believe there's only a few incidents going on in the province right now, but we're ready to go. We've got people that are willing to step up if needed, and we're just pretty much in a holding pattern until something happens, or enjoying the milder weather and just kind of skate through into the winter months.
Thanks. And I also noticed that you're advertising for new members of the volunteer detachment. I'm wondering if you can just comment on that at all.
So far, so good. We've received a number of applications. I don't have the exact total in front of me, but it definitely has been a lot of interest. The campaign that was worked on both with my Deputy Fire Chief, Jonathan Welsh, who looks after training, and the communications department with the city of Courtenay in particular, Ann Gio and Lisa Zarakis, as it's something that's new this year. It's something that Deputy Chief Welsh wanted to try, and so far so good. Even putting the sandwich board in front of the fire hall today, we had a person walk in that saw it. So lots of positives coming out of the program so far, and we'll see where we end up when it comes time to selecting some new volunteers.
Great, thanks very much.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Theos.
Thank you very much, Acting Mayor. Thanks for the report. I appreciate all the detail you put in, and yeah, I'm certain that the kids being able to come back and see you guys, and at the parade, how much excitement that always draws. But I'm just curious. We're actually buzzing along pretty well here, so I don't want Wendy to have this amazing record here. But no, I'm just curious as in terms of the non-emergency calls compared to the emergency calls. We're around the 25%. The non-emergency calls were down 23%. The emergency calls were up 25%. And my question is, was there a change in the reporting of those non-emergency and emergency calls, just because they're almost around the same percent, or are they still reported the same way and it just happens to be a coincidence that the numbers are pretty close together? Or, just was curious about that, Kurt.
Thank you for the question. Not much has changed in the way that the calls are being reported. The one thing that we have had to do is when we're dealing with calls in people that are living rough in some of the areas where you would have a large number of people camping. Before, we would just send one person out there to check. Obviously, that's not the safest system to be using. So now some of those calls are general pages. If we're going to an area such as down Condensory by the bridge, or Anfield by the Walmart, where we know that homeless encampments are, we'll do a general page and we'll send out 4 firefighters just to make sure that we're keeping everybody safe and still providing a decent level of service.
Councillor Hillian, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move that council receive the Courtenay Fire Department semi-annual activity report briefing note.
Okay, thank you. Looks like we've had quite a bit of discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That's carried. Okay, we are on to council reports, and we'll start with Councillor Cole-Hamilton. Okay, thank you. And Councillor Frisch. Councillor Hillian.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to advise that I did send in my report of June activities to staff, so I believe that will be published within minutes. I would like to highlight two small items, though. One is that I had the opportunity to meet with individuals from the leadership of the Comox Valley Pickleball Association, and to put them in touch with staff regarding their initiative to start expanding the facilities available for their sport. I thought council might be interested to know that pickleball is beating its path to our door once again. And I've also been supporting the mayor by attending the Ukrainian newcomer support meetings, where a number of individuals in the community who are providing support for newcomers who have fled the war in Ukraine are here, and it's been both heartening and concerning in some regard, because once again we see that the community is stepping in where perhaps the federal government you would hope would provide a bit more leadership, but it is emphasizing what a caring community we have, the number of individuals who are coming forward to step into the breach and provide the support that many newcomers are experiencing, both coming to a new country with language barriers and fleeing trauma that none of us could ever imagine. So I appreciate that the mayor has actually gone out of his way to help facilitate that process, and I think it's being appreciated by the individuals involved. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Councillor Hillian. And Councillor McCollum.
Thanks. Just briefly, I wanted to express my gratitude for being able to attend the unveiling of the Guardian poll on Friday. It was just a wonderful ceremony to get to witness, and I just really appreciated hearing the context and learning about some new information about the historical connection between the various hereditary chiefs, and the work around relationships and connections with the settler community here in the Comox Valley, as well as some storytelling and learning about the symbolism held within our new piece of local art. So just wanted to briefly highlight that, although I know we spoke to it at the beginning of the meeting as well. Thanks.
Thank you. And Councillor Theos.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. And what I wanted to say was, today had a chance to, and this is not completely of council reports, but I thought it was just something I was very happy with to see in our community, is that I was downtown and able to experience the new location of Mud Sharks, and how lively and energetic the downtown was today, and something like the acting it's not the acting, the chief was mentioning earlier in regards to energy rising and attitudes, getting back to pre-2019. And that feeling, and I saw that feeling there, and another one was Bigfoot Donuts expanding their location next door, and was able to look inside there. It was closed when I was there, but able to look inside and see, the impressive changes that were made there. And I just have this feeling that there is going to be renewed energy and enthusiasm and excitement about people doing business in the community, and just people in general visiting the community. I happened to see a number of tourists, it was a very heartwarming sight. I'll tell you that much. So I just wanted to report on how happy I was to see that.
Great, thank you, Councillor Theos. That's a really good point, and I know there was some concerns that Mud Shark was moving from quite a busy active corner, but I think they're going to really liven up that area and bring some vitality to that area as well. So I just have a couple things to mention. I will be sending in my report as well, but it's just some themes that came up over the last month, and really it was around diversity. And I think this kind of segues into our next items coming up. You know, we had obviously National Indigenous Peoples Day. We had the Welcoming Communities had an open house. Councillor Hillian mentioned attending the welcoming Ukrainian newcomers. And obviously Pride Walk and the flag raising, et cetera. So I'm really noticing kind of the vibrancy of the diversity in the community, and I think it really shows that we have a lot of strengths in the community that we can celebrate. And of course, we had the pole raising as well. So I think that, I just think all these events are really illustrating to me that we are becoming a little bit more diverse community. And I had the opportunity to be interviewed by a planning student actually around the cultural heritage policy. And it was great because our CAO just happened to be able to participate in the end of that interview. And something that was great to hear was that, and our planning staff could probably back this up, that out of developments coming forward, there's been no resistance to involving Comox First Nation in those development permits, doing the walkthrough. It is not a mandatory policy, but we are having folks really respect that we are on unceded lands, and there are some very sensitive archaeological areas here. So I think all of that combined, I think bodes well. And just one last thing, I did attend the Aitken Community Hospice grand opening in the capacity of acting mayor last week, and it was amazing. I stayed there for quite a while and had some great conversations with the staff there. And it was just wonderful to see that facility, Oceanfront Village, is coming to life, and the hospice beds will be filling soon, and they have beautiful views of the water and so many amenities there. So having had my mom pass away this past year, and being able to have her at home was wonderful, but it certainly will be a relief to folks who are not able to have family members at home and need a facility such as hospice to take care of them. So that was really a very positive event. And I see Councillor Hillian has another comment. Thanks.
Thank you, Mary. I just wanted to acknowledge that since we last met, we did celebrate July 1st, and we'd be remiss if we didn't commend all the staff and volunteer efforts to make that a successful day. It was wonderful to see the community out on the street again. I know that several of us had the opportunity to march in the parade and to take part in the events, to cut the cake and all of that. And I think for the most part, our community really appreciated that opportunity to gather and celebrate. And although there are aspects of the day that are continually challenging and that we want to look at in a different way, perhaps in the future, we can certainly appreciate the work that went into making the day what it was. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. No further reports from council, so we'll move on to the next item. Council resolutions. Councillor McCollum.
Thanks. Yes, most happy to move this resolution that was put forward by Councillor Morin, who's acting mayor tonight, so I'm going to read it for her. Whereas the city of Courtenay aspires to be a safe, supportive, and inclusive community for all citizens, regardless of race, color, ancestry, place of origin, religion, sex, gender identity or expression, sexual orientation, physical disability, mental disability, marital status, family status, age, political belief, criminal conviction not related to employment, or any other protected grounds. And whereas despite this aspiration, discriminatory and hateful incidents directed at individuals, families, organizations, and businesses occur. And whereas to address these challenges, it takes a community working together to reinforce anti-discrimination values, create effective policies and programs, and build our community resilience. Therefore, be it resolved that whenever appropriate, the City of Courtenay state in both verbal and written materials that racist, homophobic, and other discriminatory and hateful beliefs and actions will be condemned. And be it further resolved that staff report back to council on options to create or enhance access to safe and inclusive spaces in our community.
Thank you. That's seconded. Would you like to, okay, anyone like to speak to it? Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Acting Mayor. I'm just wondering if you might like to speak to it, given that it is your resolution and the city is a signatory to the community protocol that addresses this, but it might be helpful to highlight what this resolution signifies and what a staff report might highlight in terms of actions that can be taken. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Councillor Hillian. So I did have some wonderful involvement by Ms. O'Connell on this resolution and the one that follows in terms of fine tuning it, as well as some help from other council members. And where this came from was, most recently an incident where someone was targeted at a local business who had attended the drag night locally. And I know that there have been other incidences that we hear about, but are not always reported to the police. So we do have the critical incidents protocol that takes effect after an incident. But I'd really like to see some more preventative kind of measures taken. And that might include, connecting with welcoming communities, newcomers groups, or and also businesses, a chamber of commerce, et cetera, just to maybe create some more awareness around this so that we maybe don't have as many of these incidences happening. And also just to take a really clear stance that it's not welcome here in this community, and we're not going to tolerate it. So that was basically it. As I said, Ms. O'Connell helped me wordsmith it a bit. And if there's anything else that anyone wants to add, doesn't look like it. So all those in favor? No one opposed? That's carried. Thanks. And we have Councillor McCollum.
Thanks, and I'll read the next motion. It's moving from inclusive to anti-racist, a path forward. Whereas the City of Courtenay is an inclusive community, but also recognizes and acknowledges the existence of racism in our organization and community, and our systemic foundation in colonialism, white supremacy, and racism. And whereas it is integral to challenge embedded oppression and racism in an ongoing effort and commitment to working in solidarity with Indigenous, Black, and other racialized communities. And whereas the City of Courtenay seeks meaningfully respond to and commit to both dialogue and action to address racism and inequalities in our city. And whereas the City of Courtenay recognizes that significant time, energy, and resources are required to transition from an inclusive community to an anti-racist city, therefore, be it resolved that the goal of becoming an anti-racist city be referred to the 2023 Council strategic planning process, and be it further resolved that decolonization, anti-stigma, and anti-racist training be included in the 2022 Council orientation.
Second. Okay, Councillor Frisch. I'm sorry, Councillor Cole-Hamilton. Sorry about that. Go ahead, Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. Some people might wonder why council would pass a resolution like this. some people might have challenges with some of the terminology and feel like it's accusatory. But what it does for me is it gives me the opportunity to reflect on the increased understanding that we have that the privileges and benefits that we enjoy as a society have not come without cost. And in particular, we understand that part of that cost is to people who traditionally have not had those same benefits and who, in fact, in the case of our Indigenous population, have lost many of the benefits that they enjoyed before my ancestors and many of our ancestors actually came here. So I think the events of the last couple of years, both in the United States and in Canada, have highlighted our need to become more aware of our own privilege and the impact that has and the cost that has come at, and to do what we can to ensure that equality and justice for all is a hallmark of our community. So I'm happy to support this and to go on record that this is what we aspire to, and to have the vast majority of our citizens understand this and come to terms with it as we all grapple with what has been a difficult period of time. And I think we have to be generous and kind in understanding that people come to understand what all of this means in their own lives at different paces, and but the importance that as we grow as a community, that we bring everyone along and not leave anyone behind when it comes to these matters. Thanks very much.
Great, thanks, Councillor Hillian. I am going to put staff on the spot in a moment just to clarify a couple things or to contribute a couple things. Again, this resolution was drafted with the help of Ms. O'Connell, who actually attended some training recently, and I had brought it up. It's been percolating with me, and then during the LGLA conference, there was a presentation on creating anti-racist policies in municipalities and what that looks like. And contrary to my previous comments, where we are celebrating diversity in all its forms in the community, there still are many people who experience racism, often what we call microaggressions, which seem very subtle, but can actually have huge impact on people, reliving trauma, et cetera. And as Councillor Hillian pointed out, we don't have a full spectrum of understanding across the population, but I think whatever we can do to elevate this work is important, and we want to work towards reconciliation, which is another good reason for this, but also really acknowledge other folks in our community, racialized folks and their experiences. And I know that in some initial conversations that there are community groups who would be happy to help work with us on this. And I'm just wondering, Ms. O'Connell, if you wouldn't mind just, if you feel comfortable just sharing a bit about what you talked to me about and how this is really the starting point, because we can't declare ourselves an anti-racist community at this point. This is a journey. And if you wouldn't mind just sharing some of your learnings, if that's okay, from the conference you attended.
My pleasure. I'm no expert by any means, and really I had the benefit and the privilege of attending a couple of days worth of anti-racist training recently. So when Councillor Moran brought this forward, I was able to help through the information I learned through that session. I think one of the biggest takeaways from the training was really that it is not enough to say that we are not racist as individuals or as a community or organization, but rather that we are anti-racist. And anti-racism and being an anti-racist community versus an inclusive community, part of the work that goes into that is examining systemic policies and structures that were created through white colonialism or through colonialism in general and white supremacy, and being proactive to look at systemic racism or discriminatory practices within our own systems and actively working to address those. So anti-racist policies include a myriad of target areas that include things such as staff training on a regular basis, not a blip in time. That also include looking at things like our human resource policies, our internal training programs, as well as any other structures that are in place where that were established through a colonial system. As the director responsible for human resources as well as communication, and being a caring individual myself and wanting to do better every day, the training was really an eye-opener at the amount of learning that really needs to be done, as well as a lot of unlearning in regards to established systems. So this is a title that is earned and not bestowed, and will take a very long time to achieve with a lot of concerted effort and energy should the Council of 2023 decide to invest in that path. Thank you.
Great, thank you for that clarification and further information. Councillor Theos.
Yeah, thank you very much. And you know, I have experienced growing up in Vancouver Southeast. I experienced friends of mine, you know, having racism directed towards them because of their differences, or even people with disabilities, you know, being negatively impacted by people. And I won't say that, you know, I won't say I was perfect either. So, but one of the things that I wanted to talk about, just, you know, kind of like was along the lines of what Councillor Hillian was mentioning. And I think this is something that's really critical that we don't lose sight of, because, you know, I am seeing, as I think maybe Councillor Morin sees, a lot of youth. You know, where I work, I see a lot of youth, and I see a lot of youth in you know, many different components. It could be youth of disabilities, youth with different cultural backgrounds, youth with backgrounds of European, etc. And I think there's one thing that's really important to hear and to take consideration of moving forward is that you know, there's a lot of young people that I'm encountering that feel that they don't fit into any of those minority categories, and they're really struggling. I think there's a feeling that that from what I'm hearing from many young people is that if they don't fit into a certain category now, they're excluded and that they're minimized. And there could be a reverse discrimination against people that may not fit any of the categories of people with disabilities and people with minorities, you know, visible minorities. And I think we have to be really cautious that you know, that we're not seeing a large amount of young people feeling that that they're feeling helpless and hopeless because they're not being considered for you know, people's caring, because they're not of a minority. And and I, you know, I really feel that that is happening out there, and I'm hearing it every day, often multiple times, where there's this feeling out there that there is oppression amongst many people, and it doesn't matter, you know, what their race is or what their background is. So I think all people, especially young people, should get the lesson that they're all very important and loved and cared for, and doesn't matter, you know, amongst any of those other things.
Thank you, Councillor Theos, and we'll see how the discussion goes and whether I'll need to remove myself from the chair, but we'll go ahead with Council Hamilton. It is a tricky situation when you've brought forward a resolution and it starts to become debate. So we'll see how that goes. Go ahead, Councillor Hamilton.
Yeah, thank you, Acting Mayor. And Councillor Diaz, I think your point about youth was really interesting. And I was noticing that in the first of the two resolutions that age is one of the grounds that was being talked about. So any young people who are feeling that perhaps this can speak to them would, perhaps realize that it does apply to them. And while difficult situations can happen to people of all backgrounds, I think what you're alluding to, I think what's being talked about here are the challenges for people with certain characteristics who have faced structural disadvantages and have for many, many years. And that's, I think, it's a little bit different maybe than perhaps what you were talking about. And I think that this is seeking to redress some of those sort of fundamental inequalities and to ask us all to examine those. And I don't see the chances of this providing any disadvantage to people of any of these sort of identity categories. By becoming a less discriminatory society, I don't see how anyone loses with that. But I think your point that some people may not feel like their voice are being listened to, the young people you're talking to, I think that's important. And I think it's one of the reasons that Councillor Moran included youth as one of the categories there to make sure that those voices were heard. I wouldn't want to speak on her behalf. That's my intuition.
Great, thank you. And Councillor Hillian.
Thanks again. It's important that as a community, we don't leave anyone behind. And I think when I was speaking earlier about the challenges that we may have in fully embracing initiatives such as this, sometimes people may have a feeling that they're that there's a certain favoritism being shown if you fit in a particular category, and that if we somehow are redressing the injustices of the past and that continue in the present day, that somehow that's going to disadvantage other people. And that's why I believe it's really important that we do whatever we can to bring the whole community along. Because when we lift up our brothers and sisters, we lift up ourselves as well. And I think that we've seen in society over the last number of years that there's been division as in relation to public health measures, the pandemic restrictions. We had people present to the regional district who felt like they had been singled out because of their views that they weren't allowed to use facilities and things like that. It's important for us to heal those divisions and to build understanding where we can, so that when we embrace new ways of relating to each other that are considering of the well-being and the human rights of every individual, we're helping all of our citizens to understand why that's important, and we're not leaving anybody behind in the process. And that's the way that we build a safe and caring society for everybody in my view. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hillian. Yeah, just clarifying, as the motion states, this would be for the next council to potentially look at during the strategic planning process. And so a lot of these, this kind of discussion would take place. Just looking at the background again of this was also acknowledging that we've found there's been thousands and thousands of children found at residential school sites in the last while. We still have very high number of missing and murdered Indigenous women. And these travesties are continuing, and we know that the health system is doing an investigation into systemic racism within that system. I know the RCMP has been tasked with that. We also have the provincial government creating a doing a large project that they're actually looking for folks to be members on, collecting data on racism. So I would say that, it does fit in with those kinds of things that are happening, and it would be for the next council. So just clarifying that. Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, we'll vote on it then. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Thanks so much. Okay, we're on to the next item, which is a resolution to change July 25th regular council meeting time. Councillor McCollum.
I'll move that council change the July 25th, 2022 regular council meeting time to 2:30 p.m. in order to hold the in-camera portion of the meeting prior to the public portion of the meeting, and that the public portion of the July 25th meeting start at the usual time of 4 p.m.
Okay, this is pretty self-explanatory. I believe we've got quite a bit of business on this day and just want to give us a bit of extra time. Anyone opposed to?
Slightly opposed.
Okay, all those in favor? No one's opposed. That's carried. Thanks. Okay. Now we're going to put in the late item 9.1, notice of motion, solid waste. And we're just basically just saying that we're going to talk about this on July 25th. I don't think we need a motion or anything, do we? We don't need a motion for notice of motion. No. Okay, great. Yes, that's correct. It wasn't on the agenda, so we just wanted to make mention. You could read it out? Okay. Maybe someone else should read it out just because I brought it forward. Thank you. Whoops. Now I'm missing my number sheet. Go ahead, Councillor Hamilton.
Great, thanks, Acting Mayor. So notice of motion that whereas at the April 29th, 2021 council meeting, council directed staff to provide notification of the discontinuation of solid waste collection services as of October 31st, 2022 to all multi-residential apartments and condo brackets complexes only and institutional, commercial and industrial customers. And whereas with notice having been provided, concerns have been raised by residents in the MU4 zone regarding the discontinuation of solid waste collection services. Therefore, be it resolved that council directs staff to bring back a report outlining the impact of the discontinuation of solid waste collection services on the MU4 zones.
Great, thank you. Councillor Frisch.
And just a clarification, probably everyone noticed in the paper that they reported your last notice of motion was in fact a motion, and they were both passed. And so I guess just to clarify, if the news people watch these things, notice of motion really just as a heads up that the motion will be coming next time,
Right.
And that it's not been passed or voted on or even discussed generally. So,
okay, great, thank you. Okay, so we're moving on to bylaws. So we have development cost charges amendment bylaw 3068/2022. Councillor Frisch.
thanks, Acting Mayor. I'll move that council adopt development cost charges amendment bylaw number 3068/2022 based on the July 11th, 2022 staff report entitled Credits for Development Cost Charges.
Seconder? McCollum, everyone. Okay, and maybe we'll just ask staff if we'd like to speak to this at all, or is it? Or not?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, the report regarding the DCC charges bylaw came to the July 11th meeting. This is the bylaw for the final adoption phase. So unless there's any significant concerns, which would result in a consideration of amendments, right, staff are here to answer questions, but it's the final adoption.
Okay, thanks so much. Okay, no lights are on, so all in favor? Anyone opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Okay, one light. Okay, Hillian Frisch, thank you. All in favor? No one, no one's opposed? Yeah, trying to drag it out. Okay. Thank